Well, folks, we have a huge update in the 2026 Michigan Senate race. Former Republican Congressman Mike Rogers officially announcing he will be running for the open U.S. Senate seat in 2026. Rogers was a state legislator and former FBI agent who represented Michigan's 8th congressional district from 2001 to 2015. Now, Rogers also ran and narrowly lost in the 2014 open Michigan Senate race by roughly about 19,000 votes. But we have a lot to dive into here. So it's just huge news. This was the big Republican we were waiting for to jump in. It is very safe to say that in this battleground state, Mike Rogers will be the leading contender as of right now for the Republican nominee. We know incumbent Senator Gary Peters announced a month or two ago he will not be running for re-election. He announced he is going to retire along with two other swing state Democrats as well, Tina Smith from Minnesota, and in New Hampshire you had Shaheen. And Democrats must defend this open Senate seat right now. Now, we know Rogers ran in 2024 against Democrat, a former Congresswoman, Alyssa Slotkin, and Slotkin defeated Rogers by roughly about a half a percentage point, even though in that same election, you saw President Trump win the state of Michigan by a point and a half at the same time when they elected a Democrat senator. Really, really unfortunate. A really, really close loss. You know, there was two close losses in Michigan and in Wisconsin. Tammy Baldwin, Alyssa Slotkin. We were hoping to knock them off. It was not something that came to fruition as of 2024. And now, as of right now, Trump has not endorsed anyone in this race. Now, Rogers did earn Trump's endorsement in the crowded primary around 6 months after he launched his campaign for the 2024 Senate election in Michigan. But this is going to have huge implications. The Senate race in general, there's a lot of implications. This is what the Senate race currently looks like. You have a lot of Republican seats that are up for re-election, but in safe Republican areas. You know, some people, you could make the case that it might be a little closer in Ohio. It may be a little closer in Texas. It may be a little closer in Alaska. But ultimately, there's a lot of red on this map that will hold. We know the swing states are Minnesota, Michigan, Georgia, North Carolina, New Hampshire, and Maine. And as of right now, I think it's safe to say that Minnesota is a tilt, which I think it's going to be just barely. We're giving the Democrats the edge in this race as of right now. New Hampshire, I think this is a lean seat. I need more data related to Scott Brown. I need more data around it. I just don't have enough as of right now to say anything different. Chris Sununu is in this race. This would be a lean Republican seat, but because he's not, Chris Pappas, he's running for the open Senate seat that Shaheen was retiring from. This is just where we're at right now. For Maine, I have this as a lean Republican seat as of right now. Susan Collins, this would be her 6th or 7th election that she would have to win. She's served since 1997, won in the fall of 1966. Then it's up to North Carolina, Georgia, and Michigan. Now, North Carolina and Georgia, it's very interesting. We are waiting for a popular Democrat governor from North Carolina to jump in this race and a popular governor from Georgia to jump in this race. So a lot of complications that could come up here. These are truly toss-up states as of right now. But Michigan, that brings us to the very, very competitive state of Michigan. Like we said, this has been a seat that has been very close in the past. And you have to kind of couple the 2026 Senate race in Michigan with the 2026 governor's race in Michigan, because that is really split in Democrats and Republicans. So they are less competitive in each respective, because you have a battleground state where you have a statewide position where there is no incumbent in that race. Now, we know Michigan is a very nuanced purple state at the federal level. It voted for Trump in 2016. It voted for Trump in 2016, Biden in 2020, back to Trump in 2024. At the same time in here, when it voted for Donald Trump, we saw they elected a Democrat, Alyssa Slotkin, from the state. And even the same thing, you can look at a very popular governor from the state. Even though I may not be very fond of her, she was a very popular governor in the state. Gretchen Whitmer won her re-election back in 2022 by 10 points. Go back to 2018, she won the election by 9 points. Very, very nuanced, very, very nuanced state. And this Senate seat has not been held by a Republican for years. It's like, look, it's like we have to go back. Gosh, we're in the 90s already. Carl Levin. Wow, Carl Levin held this seat. Oh, my goodness. We go back to 1972 is the last time this seat was held by a Republican. 1972. You had one Democrat and then a second Democrat. So let's look at Gary Peters' first election back in 2014. Granted, this was a good year for Republicans. 2014 was a great midterm for the Republican Party. This was Barack Obama's second midterm. Gary Peters won by a very comfortable margin. This was kind of before we saw Michigan as I guess you could say, a swing state. You want to go back to 2008. It voted for Barack Obama by 16 points. It voted for John Kerry by 3 points. It voted for Al Gore by 5 points. Go back to the Clinton times, 13 points, 7 points. Has not voted for a Republican since George Herbert Walker Bush, 1988. Voted for George Bush over Michael Dukakis by roughly 8 percentage points. Since 2016, it had been, 2 decades since it had voted for a Republican. So very nuanced. But this was kind of before, this was before it really became a nuanced swing state. You're looking at 2014, and that's actually in the House right here. But in the Senate, we saw Gary Peters won this election right here by roughly 13 percentage points. Went on to 2020, which was a better year for Democrats. Much better than 2014 was for Democrats. A John James, who had ran for the Senate in 2018, lost by a healthy margin by about 6 points. Did a lot better than he was expected to do. And look at the results here. He ran again in 2020 and only lost to the incumbent senator by roughly 90,000 votes. This is about a point and a half that separated Gary Peters and John James in this race. And now we know John James is running in the governor's race in Michigan in 2026. So very, very close election. And of course, we know it was a very close election in 24 for the Senate race. So it is very fair to say it could be a very, very close race again in Michigan in 2026. Now, as of right now, Mallory McMorrow, she is the only declared Democrat in this race so far. And like we said, there is kind of a split in Michigan because there is an open governor's race. Democrats and Republicans, there's going to be a primary for both of them. So we know Jocelyn Benson, the Michigan Secretary of State, Garland Gilchrist, the Lieutenant Governor of Michigan, have already jumped in the governor's race, that's going to be an interesting race with the former, or I believe current, mayor of Detroit he's a Democrat, running an independent campaign. We're going to see how that all kind of turns out. Obviously not for this video, but just to show, this is going to split Republicans and Democrats between these two races. Because you can see over here, Mike Cox, John James, Ark Nesbitt, big names in Michigan Republican circles are running for the governor's mansion, not for this Senate seat. But back to the Senate race, Mallory McMorrow is a state senator, the only Democrat who's been declared as of right now. And then you have Haley Stevens, who I think she would have a lot of support if she were to jump in this race. She is a current representative from Michigan's 11th congressional district. She was in the Obama administration. Represents a manufacturing. There's a lot of manufacturing in her district. So a lot, I love to think of the idea of Rashida Tlaib jumping in this race. I would just love it if Rashida Tlaib was in this race. You can just, Mike Rogers, you might as well start, you might as well start the victory cake. You might as well start that now if Rashida Tlaib is the nominee, but I doubt that'll happen. But then you had someone like Pete Buttigieg, who was really considering running in this race and the Senate race and the governor's mansion. Obviously, we know he is now going to be looking at running for president in 2028, so took him away from this race. But then on the Republican side, you have Mike Rogers. Tudor Dixon, I think, is the big one. She has not made a decision yet. Is she going to run for the governor's race? Is she going to run for the Senate race? This is the thing. I think the Republicans already have good candidates in both races, and I think more competition, the better. The more competition, the better. You're just going to make the Republicans in the primary. It's iron on iron. You're sharpening your swords for the general election. But I think Mike Rogers would be a great candidate. Once again, like we said, only lost by about 18,000, 19,000 votes in 2024, ran behind President Trump. Unfortunately, Trump won about 49% of the state. Mike Rogers won about 48% of the state. And as of right now, the hypothetical polling and that is just we want just the primary. Tudor Dixon up on Mike Rogers. So that's an interesting take you could go about it, but you have roughly, a third to 50% of the electorate's other undecided in these races right here. As of right now, Mike Rogers has endorsements from John Thune, the senator from South Dakota, and the Senate Majority Leader, Tim Scott, who is the chair of the National Republican Senatorial Committee, and then Newt Gingrich, who is obviously the former Speaker of the House. He led that great wave of new Republicans to the House in 1994, broke Democrat control. They controlled the House for 40 freaking years, the Democrats did. Newt Gingrich and the Republicans with their, was it like Promise to America or Pact with America? I can't remember exactly what it was. But that he has the endorsement of Newt Gingrich here. Now, in a general election right now, or I guess you could look at the predictions. Right now, it's basically a toss-up with the race to the White House as a tilt Democrat. Like I said, as of right now, if I had to just pick one way or another, I'm going to say like a slight Democrat by like a point, only because of it's a midterm. The Republicans are in control. That's the only reason that's where I'm at. But ultimately, we still have a year and a half for things to play out. How is Donald Trump's economic agenda going to be implemented? His domestic spending agenda? Taxes? How is that all going to play out? What's going to happen with Trump's tariffs? Is he going to be able to reshore manufacturing? Michigan is a big area, big manufacturing base. You could see, are there plants that start to reopen in Michigan or plans for plants to reopen in Michigan? That could really help the Trump administration out. We can see some polling right here. Really a lot of it with Mike Rogers within a point, actually up 6 points there, but we're so far out. Who really knows? And then over Haley Stevens, who I think would be leading the pack, up by 6 points. And we can look at the Democrats and see all the polling has Gretchen Whitmer, which we know she's not running for this open Senate race here. So obviously this is huge news. I think this was expected news, but still very big news that it is now official. And he had released a campaign video. Let's take a look right over here. Let's just take a listen to his campaign video.
Show up and do the hard work. That's what my folks taught us. 5 boys growing up in a military family in Livingston County. Our dad worked as a shop teacher at Redford Union High. He even built the house we grew up in. And our mom ran the Brighton Chamber of Commerce. They showed us boys the value of hard work and service. I'm Mike Rogers. In all my life, I put that into practice. The lessons I learned working on a factory floor, serving as an officer in the United States Army, and then as a federal agent protecting our communities, taking down drug dealers and gangsters. It taught me about grit and sacrifice. But I knew I could do more. For Michigan. In the state Senate, I battled for our children's education. In Congress, I defended our national security. Then, in the private sector, I protected America's privacy and our data infrastructure from cyber criminals and foreign threats like China, Russia, and Iran. As your next senator, I won't just represent Michigan. I'll fight for it. I'll stand with President Trump, and we will deliver on the mandate given to him by the American people. For too long, we've been represented by two-faced politicians who say they're moderates but vote as radicals when they get elected. That ends now. For me, it will always be America and Michigan first. Rewarding hard work and investing in the skilled trades, cutting wasteful spending, lowering the cost of gas, groceries, and prescription drugs. Alongside President Trump, I'll fight to bring good, high-paying manufacturing jobs back to Michigan. And I guarantee we'll protect Social Security for our seniors. I'll always fight for Michigan's values in the United States Senate.
And as a loyal Michigan State fan, I don't always agree with these Wolverines, but when my husband says he's going to do something, you can take that to the bank.
I'm Mike Rogers. I'm running to serve as your next senator because service is what I've always done. Michigan, let's get to work.
Well, that is the initial campaign ad. I know he was on Steve Bannon's War Room, and you can already see the Democrats are freaking out. Look at this. I've officially been in the race for 8 hours, and New Jersey transplant Mallory McMarxus is already setting off alarms and telling bold-faced lies to try and raise money. Hey there, it's Mallory McMarrow today. Mike Rogers announced his campaign for U.S. Senate. He's a career politician. Co-sponsored 4 bills that would criminalize reproductive health care. Paused his congressional career to cash out. You know, obviously, we know the game of politics. We know how this works. This is just the game that happens in Washington, D.C. But obviously, Michigan, in the overall picture, is going to be a huge huge piece of this pie right here. Republicans, if they want to increase their majority, it runs through Michigan, it runs through Georgia, it runs through North Carolina. The National Senatorial Republican Committee, their goal, 55 seats in the Senate. It runs directly through Michigan now. Directly through Michigan. So that's going to wrap things up for today, folks. Drop down below if you like this video. Hit that subscribe button. Smash that notification bell so you never miss another video from us again in the future. And we will catch you next time, folks.